I stop being overlooked for projects that I basically built? This is a question that I got from a client of mine a few days ago, and I found it very, very interesting because the situation she was in is something that I feel happens quite a lot. So basically, she was working and working on a project, and she was the one doing the most of the job. So she did most of the work, she did most of the analysis of the optimization coding and so on. And then when it was time to present that work and to actually explain the project, someone else took over, explained it better, and sort of got more credit than she did, simply because they somehow sold it better. And I thought it is very much worth talking about that, because many times in STEM we feel that doing the technical part actually is just basically doing the job. So if we do the technical part, we are going to be recognized for it and so on. But many times this is actually not the case. And the reason why that is not the case is because people who are managers, who are maybe CEOs, stakeholders and so on, aren't from our specific field. So they sometimes, and I would say in the majority of the cases, cannot appreciate the importance of our work. So if we say things like we built this algorithm, or we optimized this, and we did this model, and then the performance in this did this, and so on, it is very unlikely that they will actually understand what that means. So what we have to do, and what actually works, is to make sure that we are able to translate that technical part, that technical jargon, into something much more tangible to them. Because the problem is that all of those stuff sound very, very abstract. So to people who are not from our specific fields, who don't belong to the tech part and to our jargon, who don't actually use our jargon on a daily basis, they really struggle to understand what does it even mean to make an algorithm, to optimize code, or to build a protocol. They really don't know what it means. So it is our job to actually connect all of that to something that feels much more tangible and much more real world to them. And of course, doing this, it's not easy. And the reason why it's not easy, it's simply because we were not trained to do it. So what I see from working with STEM professionals is that we were trained to think in this, what I call cause-consequence format. So we did this and then this happened. However, the vast majority of people, and especially those who are not trained in STEM disciplines, don't think in that way. They think in impact, like this does that, right? So it is our job to sort of shift this mindset and make sure that we know how to make that work that is quite abstract and quite somehow sounds like noise to people who are outside the field, how to make that work tangible and visible to others. And that's actually the only way your work can be valued and seen. Because when people don't understand something, it is very unlikely, or I would say even impossible, for them to appreciate it. Because if you say algorithm and the other person doesn't understand what it means, it is very unlikely that they are going to get you the promotion that you want, the funding that you want, the recognition that you want. So not because they do not value your work, but they cannot see what it means. Like, they cannot see what it means in practice. And it is our job, apart from doing the technical part, to make sure that we know how to translate it into something tangible, so that we make it easy for them to understand what our work consists of. This reminds me of some situations when I was at some networking events and I would explain what I did in my PhD, in my scientific work, and then people would say, like, they would nod along, sort of understanding what I was talking about, and then at some point they would say, yeah, but what is it that you actually do? And this was a clear sign that I wasn't explaining my work correctly, because they thought they were understanding it, but they were not able to appreciate it because they weren't fully understanding what is the impact of my work, what is the direct real world consequence of my efforts. And I would say that this is exactly what you need to do. So if you want your work to be recognized, you have to connect it to some real world consequence that the people who are listening to you can feel and can see in sort of a tangible way. And of course, this is a skill that requires practice, because it's not something that we were taught while learning our STEM skill, whether at university, grad school, and so on. So it's something that requires a little bit of effort the first times that you do it, because you sort of really have to train your mind to think in a different way. And of course, you can do that on your own, and you can train yourself to think in terms of tangible outcomes instead of thinking in terms of algorithms, protocols, and all of those jargonic words that don't mean anything to people outside our field. But it's something that if you do not put intention into, it's very unlikely that you will achieve, because our mind simply is trained to work in another way. And doing this training and training your mind to actually shift the mindset and paradigm from consequences to impact is exactly what I teach in my coaching program. So I work with STEM professionals, that means engineers, scientists, data scientists, developer, and others, and I help them how to improve their communication skills. For example, I help them how to make their work be visible and be seen to people who are outside of their fields and who don't necessarily know what their work means in terms of jargon, right? Algorithm, experiments, protocols, optimizations, and so on. So if you are interested in this kind of coaching, if you sort of want to train that muscle in real world, in some friendly environment in which we can actually get you to be very, very sharp when it comes to explaining your work, showing the impact of the brilliant work that you're doing, I'm going to leave a link down below where you can schedule a completely free discovery call with me, where we can talk about exactly that, your struggles, your challenges in your STEM career that you're facing, and how communication coaching can assist you with career, with your career improvement, with getting clearer when you are saying or explaining your work, and of course how you can save time and energy in these presentations and these talks and meetings that you are having. So I hope that you found this video useful, and as always, see you in the next few days in another video. Bye bye.